Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world one book at a time.
Today, we're looking at something of a ghost in the machine of our culture. We're talking about a box office disaster from 1982 that somehow managed to install an entire operating system in our collective imagination.
An operating system is the perfect way to put it. It really is. Because when you think about the future today, when you close your eyes and picture the future, you're not seeing a blank slate, are you?
No, not at all. You're picturing something very specific.
Oh, a very specific aesthetic, right. Rain, neon, decay. An aesthetic that was basically codified 4 decades ago. We are talking, of course, about Blade Runner.
But, and I think we need to be really clear about this right at the top, we are not here to review a movie.
Definitely not.
If you want to know if the special effects hold up or if Harrison Ford was, grumpy on set, there are literally 1,000 other places for that.
Right. We're zooming out. Way out. We are here to look at the Blade Runner experience, which is an anthology edited by a cultural theorist named Will Brooker, and we're using his book to ask a much, much bigger question.
Which is how? How does a movie that pretty much nobody saw in theaters become the actual lens through which we view everything from ChatGPT to the urban housing crisis?
It's the verb problem, isn't it?
The verb problem, yes. Let's start right there. Because William Gibson, the guy who basically invented cyberpunk with Neuromancer, he famously said that Blade Runner isn't a noun anymore, it's a verb.
He said things had been Blade Runnered.
Exactly. He talked about walking through Tokyo or Singapore and seeing a street corner that looked like it had been Blade Runnered. Now, just stop and think about the implication of that for a second.
It's inverted.
It's totally inverted. He wasn't saying the movie looked like the city. He was saying the city had been changed, retrofitted, polluted, illuminated to match the fiction.
The fiction is writing the reality. The movie isn't a reflection of the city. The city is trying to catch up to the movie. It's like a predictive model that became a blueprint.
And that, right there, is a crisis in perception. That's the core of what we're digging into today. We are going to map the systems, the aesthetic feedback loops, the fan dynamics, the urban theory that allowed this one narrative to outlive its creators and literally dictate how we see the world.
We need to figure out why, when someone says AI, the first image in our head is a sad robot in the rain.
And why, when someone says future city, we immediately think of giant neon ads and crowded, steaming streets.
Because these aren't just aesthetic choices anymore, are they? They're inherited cognitive structures. They're the default settings. So let's talk about our guide for this. Will Brooker, who is he, and why is he the one to map this out for us?
So Brooker is a cultural theorist, but he's not your typical, ivory tower academic. He really operates in that messy, blurry space between the corporate franchise, Warner Bros., the studio, and the people who actually live with the story, the fans.
He's done this for other big franchises, right? Like Batman and Star Wars.
Exactly. He looks at how these massive stories are co-created, how the fans and the studios are in this constant wrestling match for control of the narrative.
And for this book, The Blade Runner Experience, he assembled a whole team. It's not just film critics.
No, and that is absolutely key to this whole analysis. If you only ask a film critic about Blade Runner, they'll talk about, cinematography or the Vangelis score.
Just the technical stuff.
Right. But Brooker brought in urban planners. He brought in video game scholars. He brought in sociologists. He treats Blade Runner not like a DVD on a shelf, but as a living, breathing, fluid network of texts.
Okay, so this brings us to the book's central thesis, which I think is one of the most elegant concepts we've ever covered on the show. The idea that Blade Runner functions as a replicant text.
Let's just pause on that term for a second. Replicant text, because that really is the engine of this entire system. To get it, you have to remember what a replicant actually is in the movie's lore.
It's an engineered being. It's artificial. But, and this is the crucial part, it's obsessed with its own history. Or the lack of one.
Yes. It's constantly looking for photographs, for implanted memories, anything to prove it has a past, that it has a soul. It wants more life. It knows it has a built-in expiration date, and it's desperately fighting against it.
And Brooker's argument is that the film itself behaves exactly like that.
The film behaves like the monster inside the film. It's brilliant.
How so?
Think about it. There is no single original Blade Runner. It just doesn't exist.
Well, hang on. There's the theatrical cut from '82, the one with the happy ending where they drive off into the mountains.
Yeah.
And that famously monotone voiceover from Harrison Ford.
Sure, but Ridley Scott practically disowned that version the moment it came out. Then you get the director's cut in 1992, which strips out the voiceover and, crucially, adds the unicorn dream sequence.
That changes everything.
It changes everything. Then you get the final cut in 2007, which is Scott's definitive version.
Yeah.
But even deeper in the lore, you have the San Diego sneak.
The what now?
The San Diego sneak preview. It was a work print version shown once to a test audience in May of '82. It had scenes that have never been seen again. It has this legendary, almost mythical status among the diehard fans.
So because all these different versions exist, the text is unstable. It's always shifting. It's being retrofitted, re-edited, reimagined.
So the movie is having an identity crisis, just like the characters in it. It's constantly asking, which version of me is the real me? Am I the happy ending version, the unicorn version, the work print?
The form perfectly mirrors the content. The film is a replicant. It's an artificial construct that just keeps coming back, asking, am I real yet? Is this the final version? And because it's never truly finished, we, the audience, we can never quite put it away.
It prevents closure, and normally closure is what we crave from a story, right? We want that satisfying the end.
Yeah. But closure is the enemy of cult status. It's the enemy of longevity. If Ridley Scott had released one perfect, universally acclaimed version in 1982, we would have watched it, said, wow, cool movie, and moved on.
The messiness is what keeps the system alive. The instability is a feature, not a bug. It forces us to become archivists. It makes us collectors. We have to get all the versions to try and piece together the truth, even though there is no single truth.
You know, it reminds me of like an oral history where the story changes a little bit depending on who's telling it, or in this case, which Blu-ray edition you're watching. It makes the film feel less like a static product and more like a living organism.
That's the first major system right there, the replicant text. It ensures its own survival through its own instability. But okay, let's move to the second system, which explains why the movie looks the way it does and how that look managed to infect the real world. We need to talk about retrofitting and kipple.
Ah, I love this part. Because even if you've never seen the movie, you know the look. Rain, neon, pipes and ducts everywhere, steam constantly rising from the ground.
The used future.
Exactly. But the book argues this wasn't just a cool aesthetic choice. It was a systemic attack on how we used to think about progress.
You have to remember the context. Before 1982, what was the dominant image of the future in film?
It was Star Trek. It was 2001. A Space Odyssey.
And what did that look like?
Clean. White hallways.
Mm-hmm.
Sleek surfaces. Lycra jumpsuits. Automatic doors that go whoosh. Everything is basically an iPad.
Precisely. It was the international style of architecture, but just, applied to spaceships. It was sterile. It was efficient. It suggested that in the future we would solve the problem of dirt. We would solve the problem of maintenance. Everything would just work.
And then Blade Runner comes along and says, no, the future's going to be just as grimy and broken as the present, but with flying cars.
And that's the concept of retrofitting. Sid Mead, the film's visual futurist, and Ridley Scott had this core insight that you don't just bulldoze an entire city to build the future. That's not how economics works. That's not how cities evolve.
You bolt the future onto the past.
You bolt the future onto the past. You take a beautiful old Victorian building and you weld a massive leaking ventilation duct right onto the side of it. You run fiber optic cables through 19th century sewer pipes. You retrofit the infrastructure.
Which is infinitely more realistic. I mean, just look at any major city today. Look at London or New York. You've got 5G towers bolted onto crumbling brick facades from the 1880s. That's just how cities work.
That's why it stuck. It felt authentic because it acknowledged history. It felt lived in. But there's a darker, more philosophical idea under all the pipes and ducts. And that comes from Philip K. Dick, the author of the original novel, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? He had this concept he called kipple.
Kipple. It's such a great word. It sounds almost whimsical for something so depressing.
It is, isn't it? Dick defined kipple as useless objects, junk mail, old newspapers, gum wrappers, match folders, things that just accumulate. And he said kipple reproduces itself.
How does it reproduce?
He said if you go to bed and you leave some kipple on your desk, you wake up the next morning and there's twice as much. No one knows how. It just happens.
It's the second law of thermodynamics. It's entropy.
It's entropy made manifest. Dick had this line where he said, the entire universe is moving toward a final state of total, absolute kipple. And Blade Runner was the first time a major film visualized that cosmic entropy. It showed a world that was actively losing the battle against its own trash.
That is such a profound shift in perspective. Star Trek basically says humanity will conquer entropy. Blade Runner says entropy will conquer humanity.
And that one aesthetic decision completely rewired our collective imagination. Because now, when we see a clean, white, utopian sci-fi city, it looks fake to us. It looks naive.
We don't believe in the utopia anymore. Blade Runner convinced us that the future is just more kibble, with better gadgets.
We've accepted the aesthetic of decay as the inevitable truth of progress.
And that's the crisis, isn't it? If you accept the dirty future aesthetically, maybe you stop trying to build the clean one. You see the trash and the urban decay, and you just go, well, that's just what the future looks like. It normalizes the decline.
It absolutely does. So, okay, we have the replicant text as the engine of the system and Kipple as the landscape. But any system needs energy to run. And the book argues that the energy, it comes from us, the audience.
Specifically, it comes from the forensic fan.
I love that term. The fan isn't just a passive viewer. They're an active investigator.
Yeah, Matt Hills and Jonathan Gray have these fantastic essays in the book where they talk about this idea of textual poaching.
It's a concept from a French theorist, Michel de Certeau. The idea is that the audience is like a poacher on the landlord's estate. The studio is the landlord. They own the copyright, the distribution, the IP. But the fans? The fans sneak onto the property and they hunt.
What are they hunting for?
Meaning, clues, answers. And in the world of Blade Runner, the big prize, the ultimate hunt, is for the answer to one question.
Is Deckard a replicant?
The debate that will never, ever die.
Oh, man. I remember arguing about this for hours in college dorm rooms. It's a rite of passage.
And that is entirely by design. The book calls this the ambiguity engine because the film refuses to give a definitive answer. It forces the audience to step in and become co-authors of the story. You have to get involved.
You have to start freeze-framing scenes. You look at the character's eyes. Is there a faint red glow in Deckard's pupil in that one shot? You analyze the old family photos on his Tiana.
You become a Blade Runner.
Wow. Yeah.
The viewer performs the exact same action as the protagonist. You are hunting for the line between what is real and what is fake.
But here's the twist the book points out that I found so fascinating. It's not just the fans doing this. The academics are doing the exact same thing. We usually think of academics as these, lofty figures and fans as the obsessives in the basement.
Right. And Matt Hills just dismantles that distinction. He points out that the academics use high theory. They use Baudrillard, postmodernism, simulacra to poach the film for their scholarly articles. The fans use screenshots and online wikis.
But it's the same activity.
It's the exact same forensic activity. And he calls both groups powerless elites. They have all this incredible knowledge, all this interpretive power, but no actual authority to change the film itself. So what do? They create this huge shared mythology that sits on top of the movie.
It's almost like a blockchain. The distributed ledger of fan theories and academic papers becomes more important, more real than the central server at the studio.
That is a brilliant analogy.
Yeah.
Yes, the truth of Blade Runner has been decentralized. Ridley Scott can say whatever he wants in an interview, and he's said different things at different times, but the fan community has its own consensus reality. They are the ones who maintain the system. If the fans ever stopped arguing about it, the system would die.
So the ambiguity isn't a flaw in the storytelling, it's the fuel.
It is the ambiguity engine. It turns passive consumption into active production. We don't just consume Blade Runner, we produce theories about it endlessly.
Okay, let's try to map this system out explicitly before we get into the real-world impacts, because we did promise a systems map.
Right. Let's start with the actors. Who are the players in this system?
Well, you have the original creators, Ridley Scott, Philip K. Dick, the visual futurists at Mead. They set the initial parameters, the aesthetic.
Then you have what you could call the intermediaries, the people who expand the universe. Game designers like Westwood Studios, who made the PC game. Novelists like K.W. Jeter, who wrote the official sequels.
And then, of course, you have the consumers who become producers, the forensic fans and the academic poachers that we were just talking about.
Okay, so what are the incentives driving these actors?
For the studio, the incentive is pretty straightforward. Commercial longevity. How do you keep selling a movie from 1982 in the year 2026? You keep releasing new cuts, you keep the mystery alive, you license new games.
And for the fans, what's their incentive?
I think the book calls it interpretive depth. It's the sheer pleasure of solving a puzzle that has no single solution. It's an intellectual game that you can never truly lose or win, so you can play it forever.
And the narratives, the core stories that hold it all together.
There are a few big ones. Memory Defines Humanity is probably the biggest one, symbolized by Rachel's photos. Then there's The City as a Living Organism, with the Tyrell Pyramid at the top and the Kipple on the streets, and maybe technology as a flawed creator.
Right. And these narratives create feedback loops. A new creator watches the film, absorbs these core narratives, and then goes off and makes something like Ghost in the Shell or Cyberpunk 2077.
Which then reinforces the cultural power of the original narratives in Blade Runner.
Making it even more relevant. It's a completely self-sustaining loop.
And that loop has now jumped the gap from the world of fiction into the real world.
Which brings us to the most tangible, physical impact of this entire system, the city. I really want to pivot to the physical world here. Because if Blade Runner is an operating system for our imagination, then its desktop wallpaper is the city, the so-called nightmare city.
And this is where Stephen Rowley's chapter in the book just completely flips the script. The common wisdom is, Blade Runner is a dystopia. It's crowded, it's raining all the time, it's dark, it's a warning.
It's a hellscape. You would not want to live there. It looks miserable.
But Rowley says, hang on, look closer. Just ignore the rain and the dramatic music for a second. What do you actually see happening on the street level in that film?
You see people. You see crowds. You see life.
You see a walkable city. You see incredible mixed-use density. You have street vendors selling noodles at 2 in the morning, right next to high-tech genetic laboratories. You have public transit. You have a vibrant, chaotic, deeply social street life. You have eyes on the street, as the great urbanist Jane Jacobs would say.
Now, contrast that with the real Los Angeles, especially in 2004 when that essay was written, but even today.
The real LA. That's the real urban nightmare. It's endless miles of concrete sprawl, it's dead zones after 6 p.m., it's total car dependency, it's isolation. If you're walking on the street in many parts of LA at night, you are utterly alone. And that is terrifying. In Blade Runner's city, you are never alone.
So our perception is completely inverted. We look at the vibrant, dense, chaotic city in the movie and we call it hell because it's a bit dirty and it's raining. And then we look at the sterile, empty, sprawling suburbs and we call that success because it's clean and orderly.
And that aesthetic bias, that Blade Runner phobia, as the book calls it, has had real-world consequences for urban planning. We are terrified of density because we've been culturally trained to associate density with societal collapse. We see a crowded street and our brain just flashes dystopia.
But Rowley's argument is that if you just strip away the noir lighting and the synthesizer score, the city in Blade Runner is actually an urbanist's dream.
This is the crisis in perception in its purest form. We are judging the function of a city based on a movie's aesthetic of decay.
And notice the class element that's baked into that aesthetic. The whole film is shot through a noir lens. And in film noir, the little people are always getting crushed by the system. In Blade Runner, the rich Tyrell lives in a golden pyramid, literally above the clouds, in the sunlight. Everyone else lives down on the street, in the dark, in the acid rain.
So we perceive the future of urban life through the lens of a 1940s class struggle because the aesthetic system demands it. We just assume that in the future, the rich will want to be high up and the poor will be stuck on the ground.
But is that an inevitability? I mean, maybe in a warming world, the rich will want the ground floor, the gardens, the shade, and the poor will be stacked up in the hot sun-baked towers. But Blade Runner locked in a specific spatial politics, high versus low, that we still accept as the default setting for the future.
That connects perfectly to another system the book explores, which I think is arguably the most relevant for our listeners right now, the gaming system. And specifically, the gamification of the empathy test.
Yeah, this is a really fascinating chapter by Barry Atkins and Susanna Tosca. They do a deep dive on the 1997 Blade Runner PC game.
I never played it, but I know it's a cult classic.
It is. But they analyze it not really as a game, but as a kind of ethical trap. In the game, you play a different Blade Runner. Your job is to hunt down and retire replicants.
You hunt them.
You hunt them. Now, to win the game, to advance the plot, get the clues you need, and survive, you have to follow the game's mechanics. You have to be efficient. You have to click the gun. You have to interrogate suspects aggressively.
Well, the whole narrative of Blade Runner, the story part, the moral of it, is about the slow realization that replicants are basically people. It's a story about developing empathy.
And that's the trap. If you play the game well, if you follow the rules of the software to their logical conclusion, you are forced to become a sociopath. You have to turn off your empathy to boost your score.
Whereas if you act with empathy, if you let the replicants go because you feel for them,
you fail as a detective. You miss clues. You might even get killed yourself. The system punishes you for being human.
the system gamifies inhumanity.
It makes empathy a bug, a glitch in the system. And just think about How frighteningly relevant that is today. We are building algorithmic systems to decide who gets a job, who gets a loan, who gets parole.
And all of those systems have win states designed into them. Efficiency, profit maximization, risk reduction.
Exactly. And an algorithm that is optimized for efficiency simply cannot prioritize empathy. Empathy is, by its nature, inefficient. It takes time. It makes exceptions for individual circumstances. The Blade Runner game proved back in 1997 that you cannot systematize empathy. The moment you turn it into a mechanic, a variable in a line of code, it stops being empathy.
That is genuinely haunting. It foreshadows the exact ethical dilemmas we're facing with AI right now. We're asking, can we teach an AI to be ethical? And this old video game suggests, no, not if the system's primary goal is to win.
The game basically forces the player to fail the Voight-Kemp empathy test in real life, just so they can pass it on the screen. It's a perfect demonstration that the structure of a system will always determine the morality of the user operating within it.
So we've talked about the text, the city, the game, but what about the physical, real-world locations? The book has a really personal section on pilgrimage. Will Brooker himself actually went to the filming locations in Los Angeles.
He did. He went to the Bradbury Building, to Union Station, the Ennis Brown House. And this, for me, is where the crisis in perception becomes most tangible.
He was disappointed, wasn't he?
He's deeply disappointed. He talks about this feeling of liminality. He was standing in a space that was simultaneously the real world and the film world, and the two didn't match. The real Bradbury Building is clean, it's well lit, it's a working office building, there are tourists taking pictures.
It wasn't the dark, leaky, atmospheric ruin where the genetic eye designer lives.
Exactly. And in his head, the real Bradbury Building was the one from the film. The simulacrum, the copy, had become more real to him than the original.
He had internalized the template so completely.
Yes, and when physical reality failed to match the fictional template in his mind, he judged reality as the failure. This is such a profound insight into how we navigate the world now. We all carry these media maps in our heads. We see the real world through the filter of Instagram posts or iconic movie scenes.
It's like when you go see the Eiffel Tower for the first time. If it looks exactly like the postcard, you feel a sense of satisfaction. But if it's covered in scaffolding or it's a cloudy day, you feel cheated.
Blade Runner is that phenomenon on a massive, systemic scale. We have come to expect the future to look like Blade Runner. So when modern architecture is clean and sterile, we feel like we aren't in the future yet. Or even more dangerously, when we see a homeless encampment next to a gleaming high-tech skyscraper, our brain says, oh, it's just like Blade Runner.
And that fictional frame lets us off the hook.
It does. It allows us to distance ourselves from the political reality of the situation. It's the aestheticization of suffering. Oh, it looks cool. It looks like the movie. So we don't have to engage with the actual messy politics of why that inequality exists. We just consume it as an aesthetic. That is the ultimate power of the Blade Runner system. It turns the real world into a movie set.
I want to circle back here to the core theme of our channel, stories as infrastructure. We usually think of infrastructure as roads, bridges, power grids. But this deep dive really proves that stories are a form of infrastructure, too.
They absolutely are. They're cognitive infrastructure. Blade Runner provides the vocabulary, both the visual and the verbal language, that we use to process the encroachment of technology into biological life.
It gives us the words and the images to think with.
Exactly. When we talk about cloning or AI rights or urban sprawl, we are using the neural pathways that were carved out by this one film 40 years ago. We're walking on the cognitive roads that Ridley Scott and Philip K. Dick built for us.
And it also forces us to confront this illusion of the natural. This was one of the most powerful contradictions in the book for me.
It's so beautifully ironic, isn't it? In the world of the film, the natural world is almost entirely dead. The owl is fake. The snake is fake. The very atmosphere is toxic. And yet, who are the characters in the film that truly appreciate life? Who quotes poetry? Who mourns their friends with passion?
It's the replicants, Roy Batty, Zorda.
The artificial beings are the ones who act the most naturally. They are passionate, they are desperate for survival. Meanwhile, the humans, Deckard, Tyrell, Bryant, are cold, mechanical, detached. They're the ones who seem dead inside.
So the system completely flips our perception. The artificial becomes the new natural.
And that is the ultimate crisis in perception. Our idea of what is artificial versus what is natural is a cultural construction, not a biological fact. If the machine can cry for its lost memories and the human can kill without feeling anything, then our definitions have to change, don't they?
And as we enter an era where an AI can write poetry that moves us, or generate art that we find beautiful, or sound exactly like a real human on a podcast,
We have to start asking, is the distinction between born and made still the most relevant one? Or is humanity simply a performance that even a machine can learn to master?
okay, let's try to bring this all together in a conclusion and reflect on what we've uncovered here. We started this whole thing with the idea of the replicant text.
Yes. The core idea that Blade Runner persists precisely because it is imperfect. Because it's unfinished, it requires you, the viewer, to complete it. And that is the secret to its incredible longevity. A perfect, closed story is consumed and then it's forgotten. A broken, ambiguous story is a puzzle we keep trying to solve forever.
And in doing so, it really shifted the whole project of science fiction as a systems builder.
Aaron Barlow, another one of the contributors, makes this point so effectively. Before Blade Runner, a lot of popular sci-fi was basically good versus evil, think Star Wars. There were simple morality plays set in space.
Right, rebels good, empire bad.
Exactly. Blade Runner shifted the focus to ambiguity and environment. It taught an entire generation to look at the system of the world, the trash, the advertisements, the corporate power, the constant rain, rather than just focusing on the hero's journey.
It made the background the foreground.
Perfectly put. And that is why it is such a powerful systems-level text. It shows us that the hero is just one small cog in a massive, decaying, and deeply compromised machine. Deckard doesn't save the world. He doesn't defeat the evil empire. He just survives the system for one more day.
Which, let's be honest, feels a lot more like modern life than blowing up a Death Star.
It really does. It validates that feeling of being small inside a very big, very complex system that you don't fully control.
So, to wrap this up, here is the final provocative thought for you to mull over. We've spent this whole time talking about Deckard the detective, searching for clues, trying to figure out who is human and who is a machine, but just look at our own lives today.
We live through screens. Our most cherished memories are stored in a digital cloud, implanted, in a sense, just like a replicant's.
Our social interactions are mediated by algorithms we don't understand. We carefully curate our online identities, editing our own director's cuts of our lives.
So the question the book leaves us with is this. Are we all becoming Blade Runners? Are we all just forensic detectives, spending our days trying to distinguish the real from the artificial, the fake news from the truth, the bot from the person?
And maybe the most Blade Runner question of all. In a world where the simulation is this convincing and the cultural feedback loops are this tight, does the difference even matter anymore? If the memory feels real, is it real?
That's the question to sit with.
I want to give full credit where it's due. This was all inspired by the Blade Runner experience, edited by Will Brooker. It's a truly fantastic collection of essays.
It really is. We only scratched the surface today. There are incredible deep dives in there on gender, on the specific architecture of the film's locations, and a lot more on the gaming aspect. If you want to understand the machinery behind the movie, you have to read this book.
This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis in Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon.
For a shorter visual overview of this topic, see the mini explainer linked in the description.
If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next. Thanks for listening.